Now, typically, regardless of what you're selling, at some point, your prospects are going to basically say this to you. They're going to say, you're going to drop your price. And they're going to be like, look, I love it, but I can't afford this right now. And in most cases, you're going to follow up with them afterwards and you're going to lose them, right? You might never hear back from them. They might stop replying to you, whatever the case, okay? Now, when somebody tells you that I can't afford this, most people rush to do one or two things. A, you're either going to lower your price, in which case the prospect, you're going to break a lot of trust with them, because lowering your price is one of the worst things that you can do. Because I'll give you an example. If I offered you an iPhone for $1,500 and then I lower the price of the iPhone to $700 just because you tell me you can't afford it, you're going to start to think that something's wrong with that phone, right? Because people associate lower price with lower quality. So that's one of the worst mistakes that you can make. Avoid it at all costs. The second thing that most people rush to do in this scenario is they tend to go out there and try to say, oh, well, you know, I could do this for you, I could do that for you, right? Now, when most people say I can't afford this right now, the first thing that you want to do before you start lowering your price and offering installment plans is asking them this. Aside from the fact that you might not have all the funds to do this at this moment in time, is there anything else that's holding you back from getting started? And the reason you want to do this is you want to isolate and really make sure that as the closer, that's the reason why they can't physically do this. In some cases, it might be true, but in a lot of cases, it's not. There's a deeper reason as to why or what is actually holding them back from doing this, right? Because I'll give you an example. People prioritize payments for something that's important to them. If your rent is due every single month, no matter what, you're going to find a way to make sure that you can afford that rent, because the consequence is you won't have a roof over your head if you don't make that payment, right? So in that same month, even though you have $1,000 in your bank, you might be able to go out there and buy a new pair of shoes, but you can't afford them because they're not high up on the priority list, right? So what you want to do is you want to really isolate, is that the only reason that's holding you back? And they might say something like, yeah, or they might say no. And if they say no, there might be some underlying concern. So it might be, hey, can you tell me a bit more about your program? I'm just not sure I can make this money in time. I've got rent coming up, etc., etc. If I was to spend the $5,000 on your program, it would put me in a tight spot. And I just want to make sure I'm making the right decision. In that case, you can handle what the real underlying objection is, give them the reassurance they need, loop back to answering some of their major concerns around purchasing your program. And then once you solve that concern, they're essentially ready to move forwards, right? In the second case, it might be a fact of they genuinely are missing money from doing this. But because you've isolated that this is the only reason, the next question you want to move on to asking to handle this objection is going to be, well, let me ask you, John, if you did have the funds to move forward with me today, would you? It's a very important question, because what you're doing is something called a trial close. Hey, if you were to have the funds to do this, would you move forward with me? And in this case, John might say, absolutely. The next question you want to ask is, but why? You know, why would you want to do this? And what you want John to do is you want him to justify and own the purchase, explain to you. Now, it's no longer a case of you trying to have to convince him. It's him convincing you of the fact as to why he wants what you're selling, right? And he might say, well, you know, I want to do this now because if I wait around, it's going to cause me X amount of pain. I'm stuck, I'm struggling with the situation, I'm quite frankly done struggling and I'm ready to do something about this, right? And in that case, once he's justified the decision and the purchase, only then, as your last resort, should you move on to installment plans. There's two ways you can approach this. The first option is you can break down an installment plan. Hey John, I totally respect that, which is exactly why, because I know you want to do X, because I know how serious you are about avoiding Y problem in your business, in your life, I've got a suggestion that I'm confident that if I was able to make, it would allow us to get started today, versus you having to wait around and the budget and not be able to afford it. Would you like me to break it down? Yes. Installment plan. Closed. Okay? Second scenario is turn it into a follow-up, but turn it into a productive follow-up where you've got commitment. So let's say, for example, John says, look, even with your installment plans, you know, there's no way that I could physically do this. It's going to take me at least a month before I can get started. In this case, you want to be clear with John and be like, look, John, you know, when I first started learning a skill set, for example, learning how to box, you know, the first month I was thinking about it and I really wanted to do it, but, you know, I didn't have the funds to do it. Okay. But as the month went by and I kept thinking about it, it just became less and less attractive. The thought of getting hit, just didn't seem so appealing. And I thought to myself, I'm always shooting and I'm on video. Maybe I don't want to get hit in the face and be on video with a bunch of bruises. What you're doing is you're storytelling, right? The reason why I'm sharing the story with you, John, is because most people that have told me a month ago that they want to take some more time to raise the funds, they disappear, right? And they're still stuck with the same problem in their business 6 months from now. Now, if that's not who you want to be, identity close, because remember, people live up to their identities. If that's not who you want to be, then I have a suggestion that could work for you, even if you're unable to afford the installment plan. So that way you don't end up being like X person. Consequence close. You've created a huge consequence, showing John the person that he doesn't want to become by offering him an option that helps him avoid that, okay? And in this case, you can say, John, look, what I can do for you is I can allow you to put down the 10% deposit, and that's going to do one of three things for you. Thing number one is going to reserve a place to work with us. And what you want to do is you want to insert a few benefits, because the biggest problem I see most closers making is they offer a deposit to reserve their program, but all the benefit for them, no benefit for your potential clients. And this is a huge mistake that you want to avoid, especially when someone tells you, I can't afford this right now, okay? So insert benefit 1, 2, and 3 and say, does that sound fair enough? Or are you happy to proceed with that? Ask for the sale. And in most cases, if you've done it correctly, John will agree. He's now paid a deposit. He's shown you that he's exceptionally committed. And now you have a commitment date as to when John's going to raise the funds by. The last thing that you want to do before you end this call is you want to go to John and say, great, John, between now and the next 2 weeks from when we're booked in, my question to you is, what would you say are 1 or 3 things that you're going to focus on doing between then and now to help you come up with the additional X amount of money? And then John will begin listing options that you can now help to hold him accountable to in your follow-up process. So the next time you message him, it's not, hey, John, how are you? How's things? How's life? Instead, it's, hey, John, I remember the last time we spoke, you mentioned to me that you were going to focus on selling t-shirts to get started with us. How's that coming along? How many t-shirts have you sold? And then you can be a point of reference to basically encourage John and keep him accountable to the exact thing that he told you, right? I've done this countless times. Without using this, I can quite honestly sit here and tell you I would have lost multiple 6 figures worth of sales. This is a golden way to A, handle the objection of, I can't afford this right now, and B, help you strengthen and build a much more stronger follow-up process. Because remember, the fortune is in the follow-up, right? So next time someone tells you, I can't afford this right now, this is exactly how you handle it.